All right, today marks the second anniversary of the fall of Kabul following the Biden administration's disastrous and chaotic withdrawal of our U.S. forces in Afghanistan. And this came, by way of reminder, this came after 20 years and more than $1 trillion that the United States invested in that country. And since that day, tragically, the Taliban has persecuted thousands of people in that country, many of them simply due to their faith. Well, joining me now to discuss this, as well as his reflections on this also being the anniversary of a gunman's attack on FRC 11 years ago. Well, joining me now is retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, who serves as our Executive Vice President at FRC. As you well know, he spent the last 4 years of his 36-year military career serving as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and he was also one of the original members of the U.S. Army's Delta Force. General, always great to see you, my friend. Welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you so much, Jody. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, you have called this withdrawal, I've heard you say it before, as the largest foreign policy failure in American history. And the Biden administration still doesn't admit that it was a failure at all. In fact, for the longest, they tried to claim this was some sort of success right afterwards, although it's true, they're not using that word much anymore. In fact, I want to play this clip for you and get your reaction. This was an exchange that one reporter had with the State Department spokesman Matthew Miller last week. Please play clip 6.
Do you still believe that this was a success? Because they have a real hard time when the administration calls this withdrawal a success. Do you still believe it was a success?
We believe it was the correct policy choice.
All right, the correct policy choice, not saying success any longer. What were your thoughts, General?
You know, first of all, I don't agree with it, and I think everybody knows that. But the thing about this is, when you have an administration that has senior people that don't think for themselves, that just follow along like little lemmings, you're bound to have a situation like this. And I think that's what happened. The Biden administration does not have any leadership. And the president thinks that he is the only leader, really, in this administration, I think. And as a result of that, his people followed along with some, I would say, even ridiculous ideas like closing the airfield there at Bagram, which was a very useful place for them during this evacuation. And as a result of that, you get people like the guy you just had on there that are not thinking for themselves, and the president is therefore not listening to them.
Well, it's either not thinking or it's just trying to spin everything to deceive the American people into believing something that simply is not reality. I know there's a watchdog group out there that documents waste and fraud and abuse and all that sort of stuff, but specifically as it related to the U.S. spending in Afghanistan. The Biden administration provided over $2 billion of taxpayer dollars to Afghanistan since the Taliban took control of the government. I mean, shouldn't we be concerned that we as Americans are the #1 patron of the Taliban? I mean, something about this just smells like a rat to me.
Yeah, we'll stop and think about what $2 billion would do for certain sectors of our society, like the homeless, like those that are hooked on drugs and need to be in a program to help get them off of the drugs. There's so many things we could do with that, yet we're squandering it. We're literally squandering it, and that's bad enough, but nobody can explain to us what we hope to achieve by putting that kind of money into wasteful projects like this.
Well, and giving it to the Taliban of all places. I mean, what accountability is there of what they're even doing with the money? The whole thing just reeks with question marks. I'll put it that way for me. And after all, I mean, we've had a presence, you heavily involved. We had a presence there for some 20 years. What would you say to the service members, General, and their families who feel that all their efforts were simply wasted while being over there?
I would simply say, look, my heart hurts for what I've seen in that part of the world, or what I've seen our American leadership do. And for those of you who fought there and lost friends there and all I can say to you at this point is, I am sorry. I really am sorry. And I will do, if there's anything that I can do, I will try to do something to make it right. And what I will do to make it right is when I go to the poll, I'm going to vote for someone who cares about our military. It may be a write-in. I don't think so, but it could be. But I'm going to vote for someone that really cares about our military and understands the importance of a ready military in our society.
Pray, vote, stand. That's what we've got to do. Let me switch to another topic. I was reading earlier today about the JCPOA, commonly known the Iran deal, the nuclear deal. And the Biden administration recently negotiated to unfreeze $6 billion in Iranian assets, and there were 5 Americans who would be released in exchange for that. And don't misunderstand me in any way. I want all of them to come home. All right, we want them to come home. But what kind of a negotiation with this $6 billion in exchange well, let me just get your reaction to that.
Hey, they're playing us like a fiddle. And since you're from Georgia, you know what a fiddle is, and you know the difference between that and a violin. It is not a violin. They're playing us like a fiddle. And just think back when during the Obama administration, remember the image of that plane load of American money all stacked up. It looked like a cartel operation out of somewhere in South America, you know, and they were trading money back to the Taliban for some of our hostages. And you just think about that. When I came into the Delta Force in 1978, we had people from the State Department that came down to help us, especially to help us in terms of policy associated with counterterrorism. And the first thing they told us is, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We do not negotiate with terrorists. And I heard that over and over and over. It was a good policy. Now, I want those people back as well. But America never comes out a winner in these kinds of negotiations. And that's where you've got to have strong leadership that has established that leadership, and people understand that leadership that a strong leader would bring to this administration or to this country. So that's why I say we've got to have strong leadership here unless we're willing to accept the status quo, and we're going to see this kind of nonsense go on for a long time until we finally get a leader in the White House, in the military, and in those places where leaders have to step up and do everything they can to keep America as the number one superpower in the nation, and also to protect our people wherever they may be.
Yeah, and negotiating with terrorists, that was a policy. I remember that. I remember hearing that over and over and over. And that, in essence, is what we've just done, isn't it?
It is indeed exactly what we've just done. And where does that get you? Where does that take you? You know, if you remember, I was part of the Iran rescue attempt back in 24th of April, 1980. And ultimately, because we failed there to rescue those people when we went into Iran, and we actually lost 8 men ourselves, it came down to a negotiation. And that was the first time that I can remember that there was actually a negotiation for hostages. There may have been some others that I was not aware of, but that's the first one. And I tell you, all of us on that mission, we hurt deeply. I mean, we hurt deeply because, number one, we had failed. But number two, we knew that a precedent had been set that was going to create more hostage taking because it was now profitable. More hostage taken now because it was fashionable to take hostages and then ransom them for money, and that's exactly what we have now. And it's a sad, sad thing for me.
It's sad, it's frightening to see where this potentially can take us. I'd like to get your opinion on an assessment that came from Congressman Mike McCall. Of course, he's the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. But he was this past Sunday on Fox News Sunday, and he had this to say. Clip 8, please.
We have to go in eyes wide open. $6 billion that now is going to go into Iran and prop up their proxy war terror operations and their nuclear bomb aspirations. I think we're going back to the mistakes of the past.
Is that what they're going to do with that $6 billion?
I don't think there's any question that they are. That's exactly what they're going to do. And they're going to, I don't think he said was they're going to use it to develop more missiles, to enhance their missile program, because you got, not only are they only probably, if they wanted to be, less than a couple of months away from having a warhead that has been enriched to the point of being a nuclear warhead, but then you got to have the delivery devices, and those, and generally speaking, are missiles, and they have been working actively on trying to have missiles that they can deliver nuclear warheads with. So I think that's exactly what they're going to do. So you stop and think about it. We are funding our own demise. Does that make sense? What's the logic of that? You didn't see the previous president do anything that stupid with this bunch of people. And make no mistake, there is no way these people will ever be our friends, not with the mullahs in there. The Iranian people are actually good people. But don't ever make the mistake of thinking that we can make friends and expect them to make promises that they will keep, because they do not have a history of that. In fact, it is quite the contrary. They've made a lot of promises which have not been fulfilled, and that's what we're going to see again unless we get some leadership going.
And a lot can be done with $6 billion in their hands. If I can, let me switch gears with you, General. Today also marks not only the 2-year anniversary of the botched withdrawal in Afghanistan, but it also marks 11 years since a domestic terrorist attempted a mass murder at the Family Research Council headquarters here in Washington, D.C. And the gunman actually shot one of our staff in the building lobby just a few floors below where we all sit now. So as you reflect back on this day in that regard, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this all day. First of all, the guy's name was Floyd Lee Corkins, and he was an advocate for the LGBT community, and he claimed to the judge that he was there to kill as many of us as possible, and then he was going to force us to put a Chick-fil-A sandwich in our mouth. And this was an evil, demented man. But he said that he targeted us because we were listed on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate map as a organization that hated homosexuals. That is not the truth. There's no way. But the guy that was the real hero that day was our building manager, Leo Johnson. And that man, he grows larger than life the longer he lives, because some people will come in and want to know, where's the guy that got shot here? And we were proud to tell them that this man saved a lot of lives that day. Make no mistake, had it not been for Leo Johnson, there would have been some others that would have been killed that day. And by the way, as a final thought, the Southern Poverty Law Center, even though Floyd Corkins was locked up for, I think, 25 years, Southern Poverty Law Center has never apologized to us for being targeted because of their hate map. And that says a lot about their character.
It really does. Well, there's no question in my mind but that the good hand of God was all over FRC in the building that day. And Leo Johnson, you're right. What an amazing man. I get in early when I go to the office, as you do as well. Leo was always in there making coffee for all of us, among other things. He's just a fantastic individual. But thank God for the Lord's incredible protection on FRC. General Boykin, As always, thank you so much for your leadership, and thank you for joining me today on Washington Watch.
It's good to be with you. Thanks.